Just what can you expect from your bodybuilding? Actually, a 5 to 10 pound gain of muscle per year is a considerable achievement. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a lot at first, but looked at longitudinally over a long period of time, let's say 5 years, that comes out to quite a bit of muscle. Growing at that rate, 5 pounds, or let's say 10 pounds even of muscle a year, for 5 years, you'd end up gaining 50 pounds of muscle. Try to picture what 50 pounds of beefsteak would look like on your dinner table, and then picture that amount of flesh distributed all over your body as muscle. It's enough to transform the average adult male weighing 165 pounds into a veritable Hercules at 215 pounds. As a matter of fact, only 2 of the 1979 Mr. Olympia competitors weighed more than 215 pounds. Looking at the career of Danny Padilla, one of the most massively muscular men of all time, when Danny started training 10 years ago, he weighed 120 pounds. 10 years later, just recently, Danny won the Mr. America and Mr. Universe titles weighing 165 pounds. If you look at that mathematically, it breaks down to 4.5 pounds of muscle gained a year. That sounds almost like nothing when you look at it on a daily basis. But again, Danny is one of the most massively muscular men of all time. This may offer some hope to those of you who have been making similar gains. I hope you are beginning to gain a better idea of just how slow the development of muscle tissue is and the acquisition of a top-level physique. Many of you are probably wondering at this point just what your potential for developing muscle might be. As potential is the expression of a possibility, there do exist certain indices which suggest what your ultimate potential is. The first of these is bone size. You don't have to be too concerned about this, as all that's really required is an average size bone structure. If your bones are too small, if you tend to be frail like the Woody Allen type, your bones will be too weak to support a heavy musculature and to withstand the contraction of a strong muscle. If, however, your bones are too big, you may have the capacity to hold more muscle, but you won't have the requisite beauty that is the hallmark of a bodybuilder's physique. So don't be too concerned about bone size. If you're average in bone size, that's really all you need to worry about. The second feature, or the second indice of what your ultimate potential is your muscle length. What I'm talking about here is where your muscle attaches at the insertion and at the origin. I'm not talking here about how long your bones are in comparison to your muscles. The longer a muscle is, the thicker it can become. If a muscle is only 1 inch long, it's never going to get more than 1 inch thick. Its width will never exceed its length, in other words. 2 inches long, 2 inches thick. What is important is how long the muscle is in comparison to the bone on which it resides. Does your bicep extend the full length of your upper arm bone like Larry Scott's does? I'm sure you all recall the famous photo or pose of Larry Scott with his right arm extended. It seems as though his bicep goes right into his forearm. It is that great length of his bicep which allowed it to become so massive. Franco is a good example, on the other hand, of a short bicep. You notice the gap at the end of Franco's bicep. Well, Franco's biceps were always difficult for him to develop also. So here you have two extremes. Larry Scott, on the one hand, with his very long bicep, which came to be his best developed body part, and Franco Columbu, on the other hand, who inherited a short, knotty-looking bicep and therefore was never able to quite develop to the same degree Larry's did. But this is not a uniform feature over the entire body. You may have long biceps and short calves, or long triceps and short biceps. There are very few people, if any, who have this feature uniformly over the entire body, so don't despair if indeed you do have a short bicep or a short calf. Another factor which is not quite as tangible is muscle fiber density. That is, how many muscle fibers do you have per square inch? The more muscle fibers you have per square inch, obviously, the more potential for mass development you have. This is not tangible, and the only way you could really discover or find out accurately what your fiber density is would be to do a muscle biopsy. And that's not a very pleasurable procedure, so I'd recommend against it. One more indice is metabolism. There are those people who are just born with a metabolism that seems to gear itself towards the rapid development of muscle tissue. And there isn't a whole lot you can do to change that. In my book called The Heavy Duty Journal, I talk about metabolic momentum, where your metabolism can be primed for a little bit faster muscle growth and the burning of fat. But again, this is something that can only be tampered with within a very limited range, so don't worry so much about that. So as you can see, nature is very stingy and random in doling out her gifts, but that's the way it has to be. We can't all be champions, we can't all be Albert Einsteins. Somebody has to take out the garbage, let's face it. Only those who possess an abundance of the required physical and inherited traits can ever hope to develop to the Mr. Olympia level. Every area of human endeavor, not just bodybuilding, every area, academics, basketball, any other kind of sport especially, stands out with a few really top-level competitors. And again, this is as it must be. Nature is very, very random and stingy in doling out these gifts to people. Surprisingly, however, I see quite a few physical types around the country at my various seminars and exhibitions who seem to possess a tremendous amount of physical potential. Many more than achieve a great deal of success in bodybuilding, that's for sure. Why is this? Why are there so many great, or I'm not sorry, not great, but why are there so many individuals with great potential, and yet there are so few who develop or fulfill that potential? I think the reason is simply psychological factors. If you were given 100,000 normal adult males, you might be lucky to find 20 with a physical potential to become Mr. Olympias. From those 20 thoroughbreds, you might call them, maybe 10 would possess the necessary drive and ambition to fulfill those potentials. And of those 10, you'd be lucky to find 2 who had the intelligence as well to know how to train and diet to fulfill their ultimate potentials. Do you see now how the odds of developing a top physique are actually stacked against you? Now, don't misunderstand me. This is not meant to discourage anyone from trying, however, for you will never know how far you might have gotten unless you try. And again, with the knowledge of scientific training and nutrition, we can all improve and fulfill our own individual potentials, whatever it happens to be. And that is the most important thing. Going on to diet, let's assume, for the sake of argument, everyone listening to this seminar has the potential and is going to train hard enough to stimulate 10 pounds of growth this year. Can the individual formulate a nutritional program that will enable him to gain that 10 pounds of muscle without gaining any fat? And is it possible to gain that much muscle while losing fat? The answer to both questions is yes. 1 pound of anyone's muscle tissue measured in a scientific device known as a calorimeter contains 600 calories of energy. To gain 10 pounds of muscle in 1 year, you must consume 600, or the number of calories in a pound of muscle, times 10, or the number of pounds of muscle to be gained, or 6,000 calories a year over and above your maintenance need of calories. That is 6,000 extra calories a year, not a day, a week, or a month. On a daily basis, you would need only 16 extra calories a day above maintenance levels. And as muscle tissue is made up of approximately 25% or 1/4 protein, with almost 75% or 3/4 being water, you only need about 4 of those calories from protein. And it just so happens that 1 gram of protein contains 4 calories. I know it almost sounds ludicrous, but there it is in simple numbers. You only need 1 extra gram of protein a day above maintenance levels of protein to gain 10 pounds of muscle a year. And your daily protein requirements are dependent solely on your body weight, not on activity levels. I know bodybuilders have been told for years that because they are indeed bodybuilders and very different from the average person, they need more protein. This is not necessarily true. Keep in mind again that muscle growth on a daily basis is very, very slow. 10 pounds gained in 1 year comes out to less than 12 grams gained per day. That's less than half an ounce of muscle gain per day, and most of that is water. How much extra protein do you think you need to gain 12 grams of muscle a day, most of which is water anyway? Obviously very little. Going on, to find your maintenance need of calories each day, write down everything you eat, and I do mean everything, from the milk in your coffee to the ketchup on your French fries, every day for 3 days. At the end of each day, sit down with a calorie counting book and tally up that day's number of calories eaten. Do that for 3 days, and after the 3rd day, take the 3 sums, add them up and divide by 3, and of course what you'll have is an average. You'll have your daily average caloric intake. Now, if you haven't gained or lost weight during that period, you also know that your daily average caloric intake for that period is your maintenance needed calories. Maintenance, again, being the number of calories you need to maintain your existing body weight, considering your current activity levels. You're not going to gain weight, you're not going to lose weight. Then, if you want to gain 10 pounds of muscle a year, and again, you need 16 extra calories a day to do that, you just add 16 calories extra a day to your daily maintenance needed calories. If, for example, your daily maintenance needed calories turns out to be 3,000, then you need only 3,016 calories a day to gain 10 pounds of muscle a year. It's almost embarrassing to those of us who have force-fed ourselves hundreds and thousands of extra calories and grams of protein a day in the mistaken belief that such force feeding leads to faster muscle growth. That is not true. Keep in mind that the first requisite is that you stimulate growth through hard, high-intensity training. Only once you've stimulated growth through training does diet become an important factor in allowing for muscle growth. The most important factor regarding diet is that you eat a well-balanced diet, which is one that contains at least 2 servings each day of the 4 basic food groups: meat, vegetables and fruits, dairy products, and grains and cereals. A well-balanced diet ensures the maintenance of health and will also provide for growth. And again, I can't emphasize it enough. Don't overemphasize protein in your diet. Remember that muscle tissue is comprised mostly of water. That doesn't mean, however, you should drink gallons of water every day either to hasten the muscle growth process. Your body has specific needs each and every day for all the basic food nutrients. When you eat in excess of any one of those nutrients, you don't utilize more of that nutrient for growth or for anything else. So don't eat much more than you need to maintain yourself, and concern yourself more with training hard and eating just a well-balanced diet. The reason protein has been so overemphasized is because the protein hucksters can't sell you water through the mail. Again, this is where the commercial interests have distorted the true picture of bodybuilding reality. Actually, carbohydrates should comprise the majority of your daily calorie allotment. Carbohydrate is the only fuel that can be used for high-intensity muscular contraction, and if it isn't present in sufficient quantities in your daily diet, your body can turn or change ingested protein and your own muscle tissue into glucose, which is the blood sugar used for energy. Carbohydrates stored in the muscle as glycogen, along with the element potassium, are what maintain the water balance in the muscle. And again, muscle is mostly water. Bear this in mind. Most of your reputable nutritional scientists, along with the Senate Subcommittee on Nutrition, recommend that out of your daily calorie budget, 60% should be carbohydrates, 25% protein, and 15% fat. If you wish to gain muscle and lose fat at the same time, you must, number 1, train with sufficient intensity to stimulate growth, and number 2, reduce your daily calorie intake by up to 1,000 below your maintenance need of calories. Again, if your daily maintenance need of calories is 3,000, cut back to 2,000 calories a day. That will force your body to use 1,000 calories of fat every day for energy. As a matter of fact, that's exactly what fat is stored energy. In the course of 1 week, you'll burn 1,000 calories a day times 7 days, or 7,000 calories of fat. Fat contains 3,500 calories a pound, so you can lose 2 pounds of fat in a very predictable fashion that way per week. Don't go below 1,200 calories a day, however, as it is impossible to consume a well-balanced diet when you cut back so low. Cut back a little bit on everything. Cut back on your protein intake, your carbohydrate intake, and your fat intake. Don't just cut back on your carbohydrates as has been tradition. Again, carbohydrates is the most important fuel for muscular contraction, and if you don't have it in sufficient quantities, you won't be able to train with enough intensity to stimulate growth. The only time I take supplements, and I know this is on the minds of most bodybuilders, the only time I take supplements is right before a contest when my calorie intake is indeed below normal and I'm worried about getting a well-balanced diet. Usually I don't go below 1,500 calories a day, however, and at those times I concentrate primarily on taking enough potassium in my diet along with minerals and occasionally a milk and egg protein supplement. However, don't waste your money on consuming a wide variety of different pills every day with the mistaken notion that, again, the more nutrients you take in, the more you use. Your body only has specific needs each and every day for all the nutrients, and you don't force your tissues to use more by force-feeding yourself. Again, the most important factor regarding diet for the bodybuilder is that he eat a well-balanced diet. Then, if he has indeed stimulated muscular growth, a well-balanced diet will provide all the nutrients and other things that are necessary for that growth to take place.